Unsurprisingly, Georgia ranked number one again. Dean Legge, Ryan Curley, later edition. We're going to put this out tomorrow, though. I'm now remembering that that's what we're going to do. Hey, no real surprises. Georgia coming in at number one, Alabama two. I mean, I think it's right for now. Why are you shaking your head? You don't like it, or what do you
No,
think?
no surprises. No, I
Yeah,
wasn't.
no surprises.
6 and 7 was interesting, but
Yeah, I don't know why Joey Galloway is so confused all the time. I mean, for me, you just beat somebody 2 weeks ago, and I don't even know that, I can't recall his position on this, but he did seem thoroughly confused during part of the time. Um, Look, I think that Michigan lost, and if you win or you don't win, that matters. But I think for Georgia, this is a time where they are. I can't tell you how many times the foursome, the quartet said that nobody played well. I mean, Georgia played pretty well over the weekend.
it
Well,
was
you know what? They
be-
played well compared to their peers. For according to us, they didn't play so hot at times, but defense did. The defense definitely did.
defense did not allow a touchdown, and if they keep doing that, it's gonna be tough to beat the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, s- they haven't allowed more than 13 all year. That's crazy. But no, they not a lot of teams played that well this week. Michigan
No,
State dropped a game to a unranked Purdue that you just can't lose to. You just can't
no.
do that if you want to make the college football playoff. Alabama didn't look too hot against LSU at home
Mm-mm.
at night. It's just a game you thought they would have or should have won by more. Cincinnati didn't look too hot. We didn't see Oklahoma. I don't think we didn't see Michigan, did we?
That's probably good that we didn't see Oklahoma. Yeah, I don't know if Michigan played. I can't recall who they beat. Cincinnati. So the rankings are Georgia, Bama, Oregon, who played okay. Ohio
Okay.
State, Cincinnati, Michigan,
Ohio State struggled. That was the other.
Ohio
That was
State
the other.
definitely struggled. Ohio State, let's see, Michigan, Michigan State, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, A&M. Look, I think everybody after the top 10, it's a little too late. I mean, everybody there's got two losses or more. Texas A&M, if they run the table and get some help, they could get to the championship game and then beat Georgia. Would that make a case for them to get in? I don't know. The Big Ten is the part here, Ryan, that is going to be so curious to watch, as well as Bedlam. Let's walk through that slowly. We know the SEC champion will go. Um, we don't necessarily know that the Pac-12 champion will go, although I'm assuming that Oregon, if they win it, would be there. Ohio
Well, if
State,
Oregon wins out, it'd be
yeah,
kind of
they're
tough to
in.
just slide them down. I think
No,
they're
they
in.
won't. I'm saying you could have UCLA win the Pac-12. That's the problem, or Utah, um, if my math is right. So Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State still have to clean up everything that's going on there. The two teams that I think are most curious to watch are Cincinnati and Notre Dame right now. I mean, Oklahoma State and Oklahoma will cancel one another out. I, I don't know that we can say that about Georgia and Alabama. Georgia can cancel Alabama out. Alabama can't cancel out the Dogs unless they lose this week in Knoxville. So, yeah, I think it's for Georgia, doesn't matter. Keep winning, not allowing touchdowns, and you're going to win. You'll be in the playoff.
It's all up in the air, and I love it. I love that we're really not sure who the top four are going to end up being. I think
Mm.
there's a lot of different scenarios that could happen. It looks like the Big
Yeah.
Ten might eat itself up. They
It
could potentially
it
play their way out of it. I mean,
Well, the problem
eh,
is somebody's got to go in. I mean, you could have a scenario where Georgia and Bama, uh, the Big 12 or the Big 10 eats itself up. You get an upset in the Pac-12, and then all of a sudden you have Cincinnati and Notre Dame walk into the thing. I mean, I
yeah.
don't think that's going to happen, but it's not out of the
I think
question.
Oklahoma still has a real shot. I think if
Sure,
Oklahoma wins out, they're probably going to shoot up in there.
you would
And
think.
then what do you do with Cincinnati? I think is UTSA someone that they still have to play?
No, the only
No.
team that they got SMU and Houston. They need those guys to get better. It's not going to happen. Cincinnati's going to either this is going to come down to the final weekend, and it's not going to be what Cincinnati can only limit themselves. Ryan, they can't push themselves over the top. So this is going to be
I
about
mean,
Notre Dame has to continue to win, and then you're going to need some chaos in the Big Ten, and and you need Georgia. I mean, Cincinnati's got to be the biggest Georgia homers ever. I mean, bigger than some of these clowns we hear on Paul Feinbaum. I mean, that they need Georgia to win in the biggest way. And by
Yeah, they
clowns,
do.
I don't necessarily mean people that cover our sport. Although there's a few of them out there I've noticed. No,
I agree with you.
is it
The
too late at
Cincinnati,
night for that?
eh, eh.
Go
Well,
ahead.
I mean, in Cincinnati, you're going to want Georgia to clean house and go undefeated. It makes their path a little bit easier
It
because,
makes us it
yeah,
might be the only path.
I mean, because if Alabama wins out and beats Georgia, looks like they're both in. Looks like that's what it's going to be,
I think so.
and that would make it likely that Cincinnati's pushed out.
Yep. Because
The
right
real
now
question is,
the only
no, you can go ahead. You
no,
can go
I'm
ahead.
always
Yeah, well, we're always
you
interrupting each other.
yeah these I always get these
Eh,
criticisms from everyone about how I won't let him. Listen, we don't cuss on here, but forget Ryan's hair and all that. Y'all just worry about who's talking right now, which is me. Now I've forgotten my point because I'm cutting a wrestling promo. Uh, I think the only league that's out is the ACC. All right, I mean, so Wake is not going to get in there. Clemson is fighting for third place in the Mountain Division or whatever it is. The ACC, I can't remember, keep up with the divisions. So the ACC is out, but that means four champions will go. Alabama confuses the matter. Cincinnati confuses the matter. But does it look like any of these teams can beat Georgia? I mean, to me, the likelihood is low. Can they do it? Yes. Will they? I'm just skeptical. But to your
that's
point,
what I was gonna. That was what I interrupted you to say. Was do we really think that any of these teams have what it takes to beat Georgia right now? Well, I mean, we saw
uh,
Georgia in
you
what
know,
you and I think was a bad performance for them compared to some of their other ones, and they won by 37.
right, and my position on this is that they can lose, but we're running out of teams for them to lose to, and the likelihood that they lose, the further we go in this thing, it just seems lower and lower. I mean, they just are so steady, I mean, particularly on defense, and it's just going to be hard to deal with them as time goes on.
If you're Georgia, who do you want it for? You want Cincinnati or Oregon or one of those guys? I mean,
Well, I don't think it'd be the end of the world to have a Big 12 school. I think if you could figure out how to have Michigan State in there, I mean, Michigan State is going to have a hard time beating Georgia.
so with Michigan, I mean,
Yeah. Well, to complete my thought, it would be, you're going to need someone who has a dynamic quarterback, and to me, there are three schools out there that have that, maybe three and a half. You got Oklahoma, Alabama, and Ohio State, and I'll give Cincinnati a half. But they really slowed Desmond Ritter in a big way last year. He's a really good quarterback. I think he played better last year than he has this year, from what I've
I
seen. I've
agree.
only watched Cincinnati about five times or four times this year, but um, it's just going to be hard. And like as good as Tennessee's quarterback is coming into this thing, the Vols are a three-touchdown dog. It's going to be really hard for, I mean, as good as they have been on offense, it's going to be really hard for anyone to consistently get what they want from this, offensive production side, because Georgia's defense has been that steady the entire time. And when you're on defense, you don't have to throw the football. You don't have to execute. Well, you have to execute, but you get what I'm saying. The ball isn't in the air, so I just it's challenging for everybody.
You start to look at it, and no matter who Georgia ends up playing, because at the moment, at present, it looks like not guaranteed, but getting close to it as they're going to make the playoffs. So
Hmm.
who it's not going to be a matter of. I think Georgia can score on any of these teams. Do any of these teams really have a defense that's going to just shut down the Dogs? I don't know, but who's gonna score enough points against this Georgia defense to even just keep them in the game? I mean, we
Well,
don't know because
we don't.
Georgia's, some of the competition Georgia's played this year hasn't been great. And, the Arkansas win doesn't look as good as it did at the time. The Kentucky win maybe doesn't look as good as it did at the time. Florida's not great. Missouri's not great, obviously.
But they killed those
So,
teams, man. I
but
mean,
they
they're
killed them all.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, they're not having super competitive games. The game with Auburn was halfway competitive. Um, I just don't know. I mean, are we talking about? I mean, Michigan State's great win over Miami or Alabama's great. What is Alabama's best win as it stands right now? State, I guess, or Ole Miss. Ole
Ole
Miss.
Miss. Ole
Yeah,
Miss is
for
their best
sure.
one.
Yeah, so
Ole Miss is their
Georgia,
best.
Georgia and Alabama have somewhere around the same quality wins, if you want to say that. But Georgia's just looked better. I don't want to fall into the trap that Georgia can't give up points. What happens in college football is we and in media generally speaking, but certainly in college football media, is that we fall in love with a narrative, and then even though there are signs, although there are not signs with Georgia right now, we assume immediately that X is going to happen. And having dealt with the Clemson crowd for the last half decade, I follow that closely. And after the national championship game in 18, we had this narrative that Trevor Lawrence would never lose again. I mean, that was being discussed, like someone's going to really go 45-0. I mean, that's ridiculous. Secondly, we had the Clemson Bama narrative and talk. I mean, it that they hadn't played with one another for a national championship since. I mean, it's we just fall too in love with things. A quarterback that can make plays from the pocket, that has a defense that can slow Georgia down. Georgia's one of the best offenses in the SEC.
In the
So,
country.
well,
I mean,
I want to look it up before I say country, but they score a fair amount of points. They just don't score as many as I thought they would have to win the national championship. But college football's changed this year, and it's not what it used to be in terms of scoring. I mean, Georgia's the number 14 scoring offense in the country. That's not bad. That's number two behind Alabama. Number three in the league is Tennessee. So, you know, you got Pittsburgh at one, Ohio State, Wake, Alabama, Oklahoma, and then teams that don't matter, and then Cincinnati and Georgia. Georgia's defense and offense is the best combination of these things. Scoring offense at 14 for the Dogs, scoring defense, where do you think they're at? One. Cincinnati's in the top 14 or 13 for both as well. Cincinnati at three, but then you don't have these other teams like Clemson's at eight in scoring defense. I'm scared to look at what they're at for scoring offense, but there's no point in talking about Clemson. Go ahead.
I mean, yes or no? Is there any team, if you're Georgia's defense, that scares you offensively? If you're Georgia's defense, is there any team that scares you?
I think the quarterbacks at Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Alabama have the capability of winning and winning by 10 against Georgia. If Georgia doesn't do what it needs to do offensively, yeah, they can win. You're asking me if there's anyone that people should be frightened of. No. I mean, Georgia would be a favorite against any team they play, period, in college football from here on out, because the rest of these games are going to be on neutral site. Georgia's going to be a 3 or 4 point favorite over Alabama. I mean, it might be more. It might
I
be
think it.
more.
I think it could be more. I mean,
It could be. But we have degenerates on our website, and I say that in a loving way, that follow these things. And right now it looks like it's not going to be a lot higher than 3 or 4. Georgia's definitely better than Alabama. Whether they beat them or not, I don't know. But this is going to be the first time that they will enter that game as the better team. And we've seen what they've done when they were not the better team and they've controlled the game, just haven't closed it out. This time they just need to close it out. That's all. I mean, they
I mean,
even
I think
even
Oklahoma and
even
Ohio
even
State are the two offenses with the most potential, in my
yeah, they
opinion,
got
as far as
firepower. They
they
do.
have firepower. They have studs at the skill positions. Those are, if it's just I don't want to play those guys, those are probably the two teams I'd look at. You don't. Oklahoma could put up 60.
Not on
Ohio State has the
Georgia.
potential to put, but not on Georgia. But we don't know.
Well, we
I
don't
don't.
ever we don't
You
know
gotta.
what we don't know what we don't know, but I will read you these numbers. And I understand that OU has changed quarterbacks, but they scored 40, 76, 23 against Nebraska, 16 against West Virginia, saving themselves, 37, 55 in a shootout with Texas. I think it's always a shootout. 52. They scored 35 against Kansas, but man, they looked horrible in that game. Just in every single facet, they could have lost that game. And then, of course, 52 against Texas Tech. So maybe OU has figured it out. On the Ohio State side of things, you've got, an offense that's not necessarily been gangbusters. 45 against Minnesota and 28 against Oregon. Those are fine. 41 against Tulsa, 59 against Akron, 52 against Rutgers, 60 against Maryland, 54 against Indiana. The teams I just named, those 5 teams, they are trash. And then you had 33 against Penn State and 26 against Nebraska. I mean, look, that's, they have not broken, okay, they've broken 30 once against what I would consider a decent team, which is Oregon and Penn State. I don't, dude, the problem, Ryan, is nobody scored 14 points on Georgia. They're blocking extra points. Every
They're
time
blocking punts. They're blocking field goals. They're blocking extra points.
and you could see this from being on the field last week. They nearly blocked the extra point almost like,
Yeah.
I don't want to say every time, but they get a lot of penetration.
They were getting there, man. They were in that backfield.
They
They're in the
are.
backfield. They're getting interceptions. They're forcing fumbles. I mean, they're all over the place. They're all over the place. If I would be terrified as a quarterback to play Georgia. If no quarterback's going to play terrified, or they're not going to admit to that. But
Tua
they're not
Tagovailoa
going to.
certainly did when he
They're
played
not going
Georgia.
to admit that they're
He
terrified.
was
But I
scared to
mean,
death.
yeah. But if you're, Bryce Young hasn't seen nobody in the country that's competitive to be in this playoff has seen the Georgia defense. They have no idea what's going to hit them, and but is the dynamic quarterbacks that C.J. Stroud for Ohio State's not as dynamic as Bryce Young or Caleb Williams. He sits in that pocket a little bit more than they do.
Well,
But
they're all
he's
three.
got the receivers. He's
Yeah,
got the receivers. Those two
they're
receivers
all
at
three
Ohio State
dangerous.
are NFL guys. They're the two best wide receivers in the country, if you ask me, with
But
George Pickens being on the bench.
non-Alabama, Georgia's going to be anywhere from a 7 to 10 point favorite against the team. I mean, they would be a 10 point favorite against Oklahoma and probably an 8 point favorite against Ohio State. Now, that's that what that means, I don't know. I mean, if you're a 4 point favorite, you should probably win the game about like 56% of the time. Doesn't mean you certainly will, but it means you're the better team. And like what bothered me so much about the Clemson line at the start of the season was I thought it was, I mean, well, first of all, it was the first game, but I thought it was wrong. Like I said that to people. I don't know if I said it to you, but I said this doesn't like just doesn't feel right. Like it seems wrong. So you just don't know what you don't know.
Well, it was Clemson by 3-ish,
Mm-hmm.
something like it.
Mm-hmm.
I went into that game fairly confident Georgia was going to win. I just think that they were the better team at the time. They're obviously the better
Yeah.
team now, but
Yeah.
I thought they were better going into the season. We didn't know what we were going to get from DJU, and haven't gotten much from him. And
Well, I'll tell you. Speaking of guys being scared, now he was not scared. He was not scared. I've seen scared, and it wasn't what he was. He just had no time, and he was running around with his head cut off. I mean, he's not a super mobile guy. Bo Nix was mobile and had a hard time. But you got to take what Georgia gives you, and then you got to make plays. And
he's the most mobile and had a hard time
yes,
out of the
but the
guys that Georgia
Kentucky
could
the
potentially see.
Kentucky quarterback probably generally speaking played the best. So maybe
Yeah, I agree.
am I right? I mean
I agree. Will Levis played the best out of all the quarterbacks that played Georgia this year.
right, and that's why the Cats stuck in there. Kentucky just doesn't have. This is a bad matchup for everybody. You say, well, you're going to have to outscore them. No, you're going to have to completely hold Georgia's offense to 20 points or fewer, which you can do, but the problem is that even that has been hard to come by.
Yeah,
I mean,
I kind of don't take the Clemson game to me. That's a whole nother universe. That
yeah,
was the first game of the year. A lot of stuff surrounded it. JT Daniels was hurt. He played hurt. I don't really evaluate that game anymore. I look at the rest of the season, what we've gotten from Georgia, and what you've gotten is utter dominance
Yeah.
on both sides of the football, no matter who's the quarterback. So it's you got to beat
Yeah.
Georgia in all three phases. I think if you're going to beat them, I don't think you could beat them in only two out of the three.
Kirby was talking again tonight about what'd you make of him answering my question?
What was your questioning? Which one
I
was
was the
yours?
question about, how can y'all prepare for the cold? And he just went, I guess you missed that. He
I might
he
have missed that. I had to walk away for a couple minutes, so I
he
must have
went
missed that one.
full Kirby, man. It was so funny. But they these guys are attacking. They are it's just not going to be fun for anybody out there. And defensively, excuse me, off special teams wise, whatever the term is for that, they you know, they're quite good there too, man. I mean,
They got a
blocking,
weapon in Jake Camarda. Yeah,
yeah,
a little bit inconsistency
inconsistent.
from Jack Pod, but
Well, and Jake
you have
Kamara
a
can be
weapon in
inconsistent
Jake
too.
Camarda.
He's not been he's boy the beginning of the season. Excuse me, Jake Kamara was extremely consistent, but maybe not as much. There was a lot of wind at that Mizzou game. Is that
Oh
the
yeah,
game I'm thinking?
it
Yeah, so
was
that didn't help. But
it was cold and windy down there.
yeah,
It was
it was
windy in
cold.
Jacksonville. It was very. I think the
It
windiest game
was.
was Jacksonville. That was very windy. So that affects things. But if you're going to beat Georgia, you're going to have to beat them on offense, defense, and special teams. That's what I think. I don't think that you can lose any of those three.
It's gonna be hard.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's gonna be hard. They're
it's.
just
There's a reason why we're when we hop on to ESPN and watch these rankings, why Reese Davis is saying no surprise that Georgia's won, but we don't know what's after that. I mean, there's no question. It's not close.
but what is the formula to beating them? I mean, they had three turnovers against Kentucky. Who did they have the three turnovers against? Kentucky? Is that right? They had it was Florida. That's right. Right? Is that right? They had a
Because Stetson had two picks, and then there was a
yes, and then there
fumble.
was a fumble. So they've had a turnover game and they won by four
34 to
scores.
7. They won by
Yeah, I
27.
mean, so I just they've had pick
You have to
sixes.
outscore them. You have to outscore Georgia because I think that's the best way to put it. You're going to have to score on this defense and hope that you're scoring more than Georgia is.
So 10 years ago, South Carolina beat Georgia, not being the better team, and they scored on a pick six, a fake punt, and then there was another defensive touchdown. They scored 21 points, just bizarre, and they won the game 45-41 or whatever it was. They were not the better team, but they won. That's the formula, because just lining up and beating these guys, and it could be that Oregon is the troublemaker here. It could be that a side to side team. I thought that's what Clemson would do. They didn't, but I thought maybe a side to side team will give them trouble. If Tennessee unlocks something this week, that could be where it does. But no, I don't believe in absolutes. Georgia definitely can lose, and the
Oh
Alabama
yeah,
game,
no.
the Alabama
Anyone can
game.
lose.
Well,
Georgia's not a
I'll
perfect
tell you
team.
right now, man. In the past, you would be confused that Alabama and Clemson could not lose, which was a lie every single time. The hyperbole gets out of control at times, but I don't know how you deal with it. I think Tennessee is going to be an interesting challenge for Georgia, if for no other reason, Ryan, that they're just different with the way that they line up and do things.
I just think the game's going to be over by the start of the fourth quarter.
Fourth,
I mean,
yes, I think so. Yeah,
by the start of the fourth, maybe halftime. We don't.
that's been the
Georgia's
pattern.
better. Georgia's better than Alabama. Tennessee played them tough to the half. I just don't
Mhm.
think Tennessee's going to put up 24 on Georgia. I
Well,
mean,
we can't ever know. I mean, you're gonna at some stage you don't play well, and I think they did. Georgia did not play well against the Gators, generally speaking. Certainly not on offense.
I think they
But
played all right against Auburn. I mean,
no,
I
I
don't
thought
think that was
Auburn was a
amazing.
challenge. They won by 24. I mean, I'm just looking at these scores are insane. I mean, 40-13 over Carolina, 62 nothing, and then 37 nothing. That's the best combined games that Georgia's played. And then Auburn, Kentucky, Florida, 3 very physical games, and then they come back with with Mizzou. It comes down to it like this, Ryan. They win this week. They are in the playoff. You know, I don't want to hear about Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech does not have the kids to play with Georgia. So that's all I've got to say about that. Your final words?
Yeah, I just don't know who's going to beat this team at the moment. You got to show me something over the next 3 weeks. You got to show me something. One of these Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State. You got to wake up if you're going to beat Georgia.
We'll see if that happens. We'll see you over on the website, dogpost.com.